BBC News, Paris.
Throughout the day, thousands of people gathered to pay their respects outside Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, the Princess's London home. And there have been special church services to remember Diana and those who died with her. David Loyne reports on the death that left so many stunned.
Tonight, Kensington Palace, the London home of the Princess of Wales, was the focus of the nation's grief. Wave upon wave of flowers piled as high as they could go. This morning, even by the time they came to change the guard at Buckingham Palace, a more sombre affair than usual, the pavement outside was already a sea of flowers. Diana knew she would never live here as queen, but there was real emotion, perhaps fulfilling her hope that she would be queen in people's hearts.
Everybody loves Diana.
I think she's someone that every young woman probably wanted to be. She was a wonderful person, beautiful. She was just a lovely person. We all hoped that we could be like her.
I just heard that she died, and I was so upset, and I cried a lot.
In St Paul's Cathedral, as in churches up and down the land, there were special prayers of remembrance, with added poignancy here, where the marriage began 16 years ago.
Many of us recall the Archbishop of Canterbury saying at that service, "This is the stuff of which fairy tales are made." But as the story unfolded, as the tale was told, there was a dimension of tragedy.
Leaders are still trying to make sense of the way Diana's life was cut short so dramatically.
She had a faith in God, although she wasn't the kind of person who wore religion on her sleeves. There was a deep faith there going on, and her relationship with Mother Teresa, for example, was one of those she spoke to me about. So we cope, I think, by holding on to the things that she believed in.
I think in many ways she held quite a lot of sadness in her life, but she will be remembered by the very considerable amount of good which she did. And I'm thinking not only recently on the question of landmines, but on the question also of the homeless, especially the young homeless.
Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed, the heir to the owner of Harrods, was her most serious since her marriage broke down. A spokesman for the family said it would have lasted.
I happened to speak to Dodi before he went back to Los Angeles to deal with a piece of legal business which now is pathetically irrelevant. And I said to him, if you go to the studio and you go to the canteen or commissary and you have a cup of coffee with a girl, the papers will say you've got a new girlfriend. And he turned to me and he said, I will never, ever have another girlfriend. And he said it in such a way. He never raised his voice, but he said it in such a determined way that I knew he was absolutely sincere.
In the Muslim tradition, Dodi Fayed's funeral service was held on the day of his death at Regent's Park Mosque in London. His body was then taken to a Muslim cemetery near Woking for burial in the country which had never allowed his father to become a citizen. While on the other side of London, thousands of people continue to mill around Buckingham Palace, mourning the people's princess in their own way, whatever final form national mourning might take. David Loyne, BBC News.
Before meeting the plane bringing Diana's body back to RAF Northolt tonight, the Prime Minister led the tributes from politicians. He described Diana as a wonderful and warm human being who touched the lives of so many in Britain and throughout the world with joy and comfort. Mr. Blair said he was utterly devastated by her death. Our political editor Robin Oakley reports on the reaction in the world of politics.
The grieving royal family went to church as usual this morning near Balmoral, Prince Charles having told his sons of their mother's death earlier. Politicians united in their sympathy and in shock at the loss of a princess whose charm and campaigning compassion many of them had encountered at first hand. In his Sedgefield constituency, the Prime Minister, whose young family had met the princess and her children recently, paid an emotional tribute to her qualities.
Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family, in particular her two sons, the two boys. Our hearts go out to them. We are today a nation in Britain in a state of shock, in mourning, in grief that is so deeply painful for us. She was a wonderful and a warm human being. Though her own life was often sadly touched by tragedy, she touched the lives of so many others in Britain throughout the world with joy and with comfort.
Normal political hostilities ground to a halt, and as Prince Charles left from Aberdeen to fly to Paris and collect his former wife's body, the government confirmed that campaigning on the Scottish Parliament referendum would be suspended. Other party leaders paid their own tributes.
I want to express on behalf of my party and on behalf of my constituents here in Yorkshire our sadness and terrible shock at the news overnight. It has come as a great shock to everybody waking up this morning, and a great sadness to all of us, and of course we're all thinking about Prince William and Prince Harry and the other members of the family of the princess. She was a unique and very lively and attractive individual, and so people will feel a personal sense of loss. But of course we should also pay tribute today to the tremendous work that she did.
Our thoughts and our prayers and our first considerations must be for her family, the Princess, Prince of Wales, her wider family. Beyond that, she brought light and compassion to our life and much else as well, and that light has now gone out.
As flags flew at half-mast in Whitehall, the only note of controversy struck was over what, if anything, could be done to restrict the sort of media intrusion being blamed for the princess's death. Politicians of all parties have been united today in simple personal grief for the loss of the woman whom the Prime Minister called the People's Princess, and in sympathy for two young princes left without a mother. But they're expecting an anti-media backlash, with the demand for new privacy laws to curb intrusion. It could yet test ministers' view that media self-regulation is the least worst option. Robin Oakley, BBC News, Downing Street.